On this week's episode, we're checking out one of the spookiest places in the United States, but one that also has a fascinating history to it. The Ohio State Reformatory, better known as the Mansfield Reformatory, one of Ohio's earliest penitentiaries, that is now a museum and home of Ohio's original electric chair, or Old Sparky. So please join us today as we share with you this shockingly intriguing story, right here on History and Relics. The history of the Ohio State Reformatory began in 1862, when the field where the reformatory would later be constructed was used as a training camp for Civil War soldiers. The camp was named Camp Mordecai Bartley in honor of the Mansfield man who served as Ohio governor in the 1840s. In 1867, Mansfield was endorsed as a candidate for the placement of a new penitentiary. The city raised $10,000 for the purchase of 30 acres of land for the prison, and the state acquired 150 acres of adjoining land for $20,000. The Ohio State Reformatory, or more commonly referred to as the Mansfield Reformatory, was built between 1886 and 1896. The reformatory was designed by Cleveland architect Levi Schofield. Schofield designed the limestone structure with the idea of it being uplifting, inspiring, and intimidating. The east cell block remains to this day the largest freestanding cell block in the world at 6 tiers high and 600 cells. The total cost of the facility was more than $1.3 million. The reformatory was originally called the Intermediate Penitentiary, since it accepted inmates who were too old for juvenile corrections and had committed lesser or more minor offenses than those individuals sent to the Ohio State Penitentiary. The goal of the institution was to truly reform and rehabilitate inmates by making sure they received 3 fundamental things: religion, education, and a trade. The facility admitted its first inmates in 1896 after 10 years of construction. Inmates were admitted for 18 months. If they showed progress, they could be released after that time. If not, they received another 18-month term. By the 1960s, the state pulled its funding for the reform model and began changing the reformatory into a maximum security facility. In the 1980s, inmates sued the state of Ohio over conditions which had deteriorated over time. The inmates won their case, and construction began on a new modern facility nearby. The reformatory finally closed in 1990. It sat uninhibited for many years. Most of the grounds, or the yard as it's referred to, as well as the support buildings, including the outer wall, were later demolished. In 1995, the Mansfield Reformatory Preservation Society was formed, and the building was purchased from the state of Ohio for $1. With a promise to repair and restore this historic structure. By this time, the reformatory had already caught the eye of Hollywood. Films such as 1989's Tango and Cash, starring Sylvester Stallone and Kirk Russell, 1994's Shawshank Redemption, starring Morgan Freeman and Tim Robbins, and 1997's film Air Force One, starring Harrison Ford, were filmed here in part or whole, adding a genuineness to the already blockbuster scripts. Today, it's a museum that's still undergoing restoration work, but what has been completed is nothing shy of bringing this castle-like structure back to its original majestic presence. And since much of the movie Shawshank Redemption was filmed here, much of the movie sets remain, and when you make your visit here, it's literally like walking onto the original movie set. We'll be showing you some of this soon, towards the end of our presentation, but before we do that, let's talk briefly about the history of executions. Early in the state of Ohio's history, capital punishment has been a part of its justice system. From 1803, when Ohio became a state, until 1885, executions were conducted as public hangings in the county where the crime occurred. Legislation passed in 1885 requiring executions to be carried out at the Ohio Penitentiary in Columbus. Valentine Wagner, a 56-year-old from Morrill County, was the first person to be executed at the Ohio Penitentiary. Wagner was hanged for the murder of Daniel Sheehan from Mount Gilead. Some 28 convicted murderers were hanged at the penitentiary. The gallows were replaced in 1897 with the electric chair, which was considered a more technologically advanced and humane form of execution. The first prisoner executed was William Haas on April 21, 1897. He was a 17-year-old farm worker from Hamilton County who murdered Mrs. William Brady, his employer's wife. The last Ohio individual to be executed by electrocution was Donald Reinbold, a 29-year-old Franklin County man guilty of the murder of Edgar L. Weaver, a Columbus grocer. He was executed on March 15, 1963. From 1897 to 1963, 315 people were put to death in Ohio's electric chair, including 3 women. One of those women was Anna Marie Hahn, the original Black Widow, who was convicted and sentenced to death for the killing of 5 men between 1933 and 1937. She died in the electric chair on December 7, 1938. Ohio's electric chair was dismantled in 2002 and placed into storage at the Southern Ohio Correctional Facility in Lucasville, Ohio. In 2015, the electric chair was placed on permanent loan to the Mansfield Reformatory from the Ohio Historical Society and remains on display as part of the Reformatory's museum, along with its large power board, which contains the switch, a mask, sponges, and shin guards. As you can imagine, the Reformatory not only has an interesting history, but given all the people who have been reformed, imprisoned, and/or who may have died here, the old adage of "if these walls could only talk" comes true more than you might think, as this is also one of the greatest destinations to experience paranormal activity. Thank you for joining us today. We hope you enjoyed our program. If you like our content, we ask that you give us a thumbs up, a like, share with your friends, subscribe to our channel, and ring that notification bell so you always know when our new content is published. And all of this costs nothing, but means a lot to us and keeps us growing. You may also leave us a tip if you choose. The address is provided here on your screen, and a link is provided in the description area below. So until next time, everyone, this one is history.